Chapter 8. Dreading an apprenticeship in the glass factory, I planned my escape. 2 days later, early in the morning, some men came to dig Meek's grave. There were 3 of them, and they was already working when we filed into the dining hall for breakfast. Meek's grave was on the highest part of the hill, and the sound of their shovels striking the earth filled the little valley. Rufus and I watched them while we drifted through our chores, 3 faraway figures under a bare oak. "Ain't it bleak, Billy?" asked Rufus. "Sure is," I answered. 2 of the men were resting with their backs against the tree while the 3rd kept digging. "Has Meek been talking to you? Is he mourning about being dead?" "He's awful sad to be dead," I said, thinking back to the night I wandered by the river and was too scared to hear his spirit talk to me. It was on the tip of my tongue to unburden myself to Rufus. I wanted to tell him how I was the one who gave poor Meek the very sack that made him drown, and how scared I was that his ghost was out there waiting to wreak its revenge. But I couldn't tell him without burdening him too, so once again I buttoned up. Before dinner, in the last bit of pale light, we gathered at the graveyard to pay our respects. Meek's pine coffin looked awfully small resting there next to the big dark hole in the earth. The skinny old preacher led us in some prayers, and then Mr. Beadle and the men grabbed the ends of some rope and lowered the coffin into the grave. "Goodbye, Meek," I whispered when I threw a handful of dirt on his coffin. "Please don't haunt me none when I run away at night." For the next few days and nights, the only thing I could think about was running away before Mr. Calder came to get me. If I took the river path, I expected I'd meet up with the ghost of Meek Jones, so I figured the road to Albright was the best way to go. No doubt it'd be the first place Mr. Beadle would look for me, so I'd have to hide somewhere during the day and make my way at night. Where I'd hide during the day I couldn't say. I never heard talk of any caves or hideouts along the road, no barns or shacks. For the first time ever, I realized just how plain ignorant all of us boys at Guardian Angels was. Why, most of us had never been anywhere except the general store to help Mr. Beadle carry a load of lumber and sacks of feed. No wonder we were all so eager to go off with Mr. Calder to the factory in Morgantown. We was thinking we'd be seeing the world. Only I knew different now, and the truth of what went on was scaring me so bad I couldn't sleep at night. So there I was, tired and scared, my mind racing, hoping the first snow wouldn't fall the day I had to leave. I did my chores and kept to myself. I was so glum Rufus Twilly thought for sure I'd received a card from my pa. "Where's he now, Billy? Ain't he sending for you yet? Must be awful sad knowing that your own pa don't want nothing to do with you. At least I know why my pa won't come get me. He doesn't get out of jail for another 3 years. He chattered on, but I wasn't really listening. If only my pa really would send for me, I thought. We were gathering eggs in the chicken coop. The hens was squawking about, and their reddish feathers were floating in the air. For the first time ever, I noticed they were the exact same color as the freckles all over Rufus's face. It made me laugh out loud. "Rufus, do you know your freckles are the same color as these hens, which is the same color as your hair, and your skin's as white as their eggs?" I was laughing so hard I was doubled over. A few of the eggs in my basket fell to the ground and broke. "Well, you don't have to tease me about it, Billy. I can't help it. It's just the way I was made." I was laughing so hard I lost my breath. When it came back, I said, "I didn't mean to tease you none, Rufus. It's just that I never noticed it before, and it struck me funny, probably 'cause all I've been thinking about is Meek and what happened to him." Meek's name caused Rufus to ease up, and he warn't angry at me no more. "Sure was a terrible thing that happened to him, warn't it, Billy? But maybe God was punishing him for stealing from us." "I don't think so, Rufus," I said. "I don't think God wants us to suffer the way poor Meek did, no matter what he did." All of a sudden I became powerful worried about Rufus. Why, in another year or so Mr. Beadle might sell him off to the factory. "Listen to me, Rufus. I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to remember it. Don't ever let Mr. Beadle send you off to that glass factory. I can't tell you how, but I know it's a terrible place. It ain't like they tell us. There ain't no adventure or fortune or fun of any sort there. If you ever get word that it's your turn to go, you gotta run off. Start figuring out where to go and how to get there now. And don't tell the other boys what I said. Remember what I'm saying, you hear me?" "Yes, Billy, I hear you. I can't say I understand you, but I hear what you're saying." "Good. You don't have to understand. You just remember what I'm telling you now." Rufus and I gathered the rest of the eggs without talking. We covered up the broken ones with straw, and I fell into a dark mood again, worrying that I had said too much and not enough at the same time. I didn't have more than 3 days to figure out what I was going to do. If only I knew how to get word to my father. Surely he'd come get me if he knew what lay in store for me. Gradually it began to occur to me that I should tell Peggy about my plight. After all, I reasoned, she told me I should have woken her up the night I saw Meek so that she could help pack him some food. Why, she might even help me make my escape and get word to my pa that I had moved on. I was thinking about how she walked to Albright every Sunday to go to Mass at the Catholic Church. Maybe I could sneak in with her so she could point me in the best direction for running away once we were in town. There must be other roads besides the one going into Morgantown. "Are you sure it was your name Mr. Beetle gave him?" she asked. "You were awful scared that night. Maybe you didn't hear right." I assured her I heard right. "Why, they're nothing but slave traders, they are, trading away the lives of poor motherless boys." Then she picked me up and rocked me a while, crying at the sadness and injustice of it all. Once she set me down, she was all business, and we worked out the beginnings of my plan. Peggy would put together a little sack of food and get me some money. There was only one road into Albright from here and 3 roads out. She didn't know any hideouts along the way, but once you crossed the river you were on your way to Fairmount, a town almost as big as Morganton. Peggy would take me to the road herself and get back to her church in time for Mass, same as she did every Sunday. We'd have to be careful to make sure that no one saw us together, but seeing how she rarely ever saw a soul else walking into Albright early Sunday morning, she weren't too worried about that. In the meantime, I started getting ready to leave. I put my few possessions in an old flour sack that Peggy had given me. I packed some socks, my tin box of postcards, and my mother's broken necklace. Once I was set up in another town, I'd write Peggy a letter pretending I was somebody else so she'd know where to send any postcards my dad might send. At times I'd get red excited about my new life. Why, I could change my name if I wanted and make up a story about how I came to Fairmount and what I was seeking. I'd say I was brought up in a holler down the way and all my kin had just dropped dead of fever, and that I came to town to make a living and learn the ways of city people. I didn't bother thinking up too much detail, since I figured I'd have plenty of time to make up my story once I struck out on the road. Other times I'd get bogged down by worries. What if I lost my way? What if the snow came early and I didn't have any shelter? What if my father came to fetch me before I was settled somewhere? Then Peggy couldn't tell him where I was, and we'd be lost to each other forever. "For heaven's sake, Billy," yelled Rufus. He was tired of me staring into space and not hearing him. "What's wrong with you these days?" "Oh, nothing," I lied. "Can't stop thinking about Meek." "Poor Meek. Warn't it awful, Billy?" "Sure was," I answered, feeling sadder still, for I realized I'd probably never see Rufus again, and he didn't even know it. Soon enough it was Friday, my next to last day at Guardian Angel's Home for Boys. I ate breakfast and went about my chores feeling both heavy in my heart and excited at the same time. None of the animals seemed particularly mean that day. The cows didn't kick and the geese didn't nip. Mrs. Beetle was in the kitchen when we came in for lunch, looking almost healthy, although I'd have to say she was still the wrinkliest, skinniest person I'd ever seen in my life. She was helping Peggy pass out bowls of soup to us. I took mine and said thank you, and I was almost feeling good at my place in the world until I heard her say something to Peggy once my back was turned. "He's here now," she said, "for Billy." I near crashed my soup on the floor. I turned to look at Peggy, but I didn't catch her eye, and I didn't hear what she said back to Mrs. Beetle. All I could think was that all of our plans had gone to waste, and I was off to the glass factory for sure. The next thing I knew, Mr. Beetle was stamping into the room. Behind him was a little man with his cap in his hands. He hobbled in, doing his best to keep up with Mr. Beetle, but having trouble doing so, for one of his feet was turned inward and he had to walk on the side of it. "Creekmore!" he yelled. "Billy Creekmore, get over here, boy!" For a moment I thought I should just push past the two of them and make a run for it out the door, but I was too shocked to act, so I did what I was told. I stood before the two of them, trembling with fear. "Do you know this man, Creekmore? He claims to be your uncle." "Oh, he don't know me, sir. Never saw me, but I'm his uncle, honest to God. Husband of his mother's sister I am. I have a letter from the boy's aunt explaining how he came to know he was here. If only you'd take a look at it, sir. 'Tis here in my pocket. No reason I'd lie about a thing like that." He had a soft, musical voice. "Don't be afraid, lad," he said. "I'm here to take you to live with your Aunt Agnes and me. We want to care for you, which is what your poor dear mother would want. God rest her soul."